Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The rain pattered against the window pane, a constant rhythm that mirrored the dull ache in Roland's chest. He stared out at the gray February sky, feeling as colorless and lifeless as the world outside. His reflection in the glass was a stark reminder of the person he'd become, hollow-eyed, disheveled, a shadow of his former self. With a heavy sigh, Roland turned away from the window. His small apartment felt suffocating, cluttered with remnants of a life he no longer recognized. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, unopened mail scattered across the coffee table, and a layer of dust coating every surface. It was a physical manifestation of the chaos in his mind. He shuffled to the kitchen, feet dragging across the worn linoleum. The coffee maker sputtered to life, filling the air with the acrid smell of burnt grounds. Roland didn't care. It was just another sensation in a world that had lost its luster. As he waited for the coffee to brew, his eyes fell on a framed photograph perched precariously on the counter. It was from happier times, Roland, with his arms around his ex-wife, their 2 children beaming at the camera. A family vacation to the beach before everything fell apart. The coffee maker gurgled its final protest, and Roland poured the steaming liquid into a chipped mug. He didn't bother with cream or sugar. What was the point? Everything tasted like ash these days. Mug in hand, he made his way to the living room and sank into the threadbare armchair. The TV droned on in the background, some mindless daytime talk show that he barely registered. Roland's gaze drifted back to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. How had it come to this? He'd once had it all, a loving family, a successful career, a sense of purpose. Now, at 42, he felt adrift. The divorce had been messy, leaving him with weekend visitations and a mountain of alimony payments. His job at the accounting firm had become a monotonous grind, each day blending into the next. But it wasn't just the external circumstances that weighed on Roland. There was something deeper, a disconnect he'd felt his entire life. A nagging sense that he was living someone else's life, wearing a mask that didn't quite fit. The shrill ring of his cell phone cut through his brooding. Roland considered ignoring it, but a glance at the caller ID made his stomach lurch. It was his ex-wife, Catherine. He answered with a weary, "Hello?" "Roland, I need you to take the kids this weekend." Catherine's voice was clipped, all business. "I have a work conference, and my sister can't watch them." Roland pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting back a sigh. "Catherine, it's not my weekend. I have plans." "What plans?" she snapped. "Sitting around feeling sorry for yourself? They're your children, Roland. Act like it." The words stung, but Roland couldn't deny the truth in them. He had been neglecting his parental duties, too caught up in his own misery. "Fine," he conceded. "What time should I pick them up?" After finalizing the details, Roland ended the call and tossed the phone aside. Guilt gnawed at him. He loved his children, he truly did, but lately even being around them felt like a Herculean effort. How could he be the father they deserved when he could barely take care of himself? The rain outside intensified, drumming against the roof. Roland drained the last of his cold coffee and forced himself to his feet. If the kids were coming, he needed to at least make an attempt at cleaning up the apartment. As he half-heartedly gathered dirty laundry and empty takeout containers, Roland's mind wandered. He thought about the life he'd imagined for himself as a young man, full of hope and ambition. Where had that person gone? When had he become this hollow shell, going through the motions of living without really feeling alive? The cleaning did little to improve the apartment's appearance, but it gave Roland a sense of accomplishment, however small. He glanced at the clock, still hours before he needed to pick up the kids. The thought of staying cooped up in the apartment any longer made his skin crawl. On impulse, Roland grabbed his coat and headed out into the rain. The cool drops hit his face, a shock to his system after days of self-imposed isolation. He walked aimlessly, hands shoved deep in his pockets. letting his feet carry him through the city streets. The world around him seemed muted, as if viewed through a foggy lens. People hurried by, umbrellas bobbing, caught up in their own lives. Roland felt like a ghost, drifting through a world that had forgotten him. His wanderings led him to a small park, usually bustling with families and joggers. Today, it was nearly deserted, the playground equipment glistening with rain. Roland found himself drawn to a bench overlooking a small pond, the surface rippling with each raindrop. He sat, not caring that the wood was soaked through, seeping into his clothes. The chill was almost welcome, a physical sensation to counteract the numbness he'd been feeling for so long. "Miserable weather, isn't it?" a voice beside him said. Roland startled, turning to find a woman seated on the bench next to him. He hadn't heard her approach, hadn't sensed her presence at all. She was striking long, dark hair cascading over shoulders, draped in a vibrant emerald green coat. Her eyes, when they met his, were an impossible shade of gold. Yes, I suppose it is," Roland stammered, caught off guard by both her sudden appearance and her otherworldly beauty. The woman smiled, and Roland felt a warmth spread through him, chasing away the chill of the rain. "And yet, here we both are, braving the elements. Sometimes a little discomfort is exactly what we need, don't you think?" There was something in her voice, a lilting accent Roland couldn't quite place, that drew him in. "I'm not sure what I need anymore," he admitted, surprising himself with his candor. The woman's smile deepened, a knowing look in those mesmerizing eyes. "Oh, I think you do, Roland. You just haven't allowed yourself to acknowledge it." A jolt of alarm shot through him. "How do you know my name?" She waved a hand dismissively, bangles jangling on her wrist. "Names are such simple things. I know far more about you than just your name, Roland. I know the weight you carry, the dreams you've buried, the life you long for but are too afraid to reach for." Roland's heart raced. He should leave, should be unnerved by this strange woman and her impossible knowledge. But something kept him rooted to the spot, a mix of fear and fascination. "Who are you?" "My name is Avani," she said, extending a hand adorned with intricate henna designs. "And I'm here to help you, Roland, to give you what you truly desire." Roland hesitated before taking her hand. The moment their skin touched, a jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. "Help me? How? Why?" Avani's laugh was like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "Why does anyone help another? Because they can. Because they should. As for how..." She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. "I'm a dream fulfiller, Roland. I make the impossible possible." He pulled back, searching her face for any sign of deception or madness. But all he saw was sincerity and that otherworldly beauty that seemed to grow more captivating by the second. That's impossible. Things like that don't exist." "And yet here I am," Avani said, spreading her arms wide. The rain seemed to avoid her, droplets curving around her form as if repelled by an invisible force. "The question is, Roland, are you ready to believe? Are you ready to take a chance on the life you've always wanted?" Roland's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. He must be dreaming, or perhaps he'd finally cracked under the weight of his depression. And yet, a small part of him, a part he'd thought long dead, stirred with hope. What would I have to do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Avani's smile was radiant. "Simply tell me your deepest desire, Roland. The dream you've kept locked away, even from yourself. Speak it aloud, and I will make it reality." Roland's throat went dry. His deepest desire? The thing he'd never dared to voice, even in the privacy of his own mind? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, fear and shame warring within him. "It's all right," Avani said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "There's no judgment here, only acceptance and possibility." The warmth of her touch seemed to unlock something in Roland. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. I want to be a woman. I've always felt wrong in this body. Like I'm living someone else's life." As soon as the words left his mouth, Roland wanted to snatch them back. He'd never admitted it to anyone, had barely allowed himself to think it. But now that it was out in the open, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Avani's expression didn't change, no shock or disgust crossing her features. She simply nodded, as if she'd known all along. "Thank you for your honesty, Roland. Are you prepared for the changes this will bring? Not just to your body, but to your entire life?" Roland hesitated. The rational part of his brain screamed that this was madness, that he should run away and forget this entire encounter. But the part of him that had been suffocating for years, the part that longed for authenticity, urged him forward. I think so," he said, his voice stronger now. "Yes, I'm ready." Avani's smile was blinding. "Then close your eyes, Roland, and when you open them, you'll be who you were always meant to be." Heart pounding, Roland did as she instructed. He felt a tingling sensation spread throughout his body, starting at his fingertips and toes and rushing inward. The world seemed to spin around him, even with his eyes closed, and then, suddenly, everything stopped. "Open your eyes, Rolanda." The voice was Avani's, but it sounded different somehow. "Roland, no." Rolanda slowly opened her eyes. The park was gone. She found herself standing in a spacious bedroom, sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains. A full-length mirror stood before her, and Rolanda gasped at her reflection. The person staring back at her was undeniably feminine. Long chestnut hair fell in waves past her shoulders. Her face was softer, with high cheekbones and full lips. She raised a hand to her cheek, marveling at the smoothness of her skin. Her body had changed, too. Curves where there had once been angles, softness replacing hard planes. She was dressed in a flowing sundress, the fabric a deep purple that complemented her new form perfectly. How is this possible?" Rolanda whispered, her voice higher and melodic. Avani appeared beside her, still resplendent in her emerald coat. "Magic, my dear. The power of dreams made manifest. How does it feel?" Rolanda turned, taking in her new form from every angle. "It's incredible. I feel right. For the first time in my life, I feel like myself." Avani nodded, satisfaction evident in her golden eyes. "This is who you were always meant to be, Rolanda. But remember, with great change comes great responsibility. Your life is different now, in more ways than just the physical." As if on cue, a phone on the nearby nightstand began to ring. Rolanda approached it cautiously, picking up the unfamiliar device. The caller ID read Mom. With a trembling hand, she answered. "Hello? Rolanda, sweetheart, are you coming to brunch?" A woman's voice, warm and familiar, yet totally unknown, came through the speaker. "Your father and I are already at the restaurant." Rolanda's mind raced. She had parents in this reality? Yes, of course. I'll be there soon." After getting the restaurant details and ending the call, Rolanda turned to Avani, eyes wide with panic. "What's happening? Who were they? How am I supposed to know how to be me?" Avani's expression was sympathetic but firm. "This is your life now, Rolanda. The one you asked for. You'll find that you have the knowledge you need, memories, experiences, relationships, but it's up to you to navigate this new world." Rolanda's head spun. She had wanted this, had dreamed of it for so long, but now that it was real, the enormity of the change overwhelmed her. "What about my children? Catherine?" A shadow passed over Avani's face. "I'm afraid they don't exist in this reality, Rolanda. You can't have everything. There are always trade-offs." The words hit Rolanda like a physical blow. Her children gone. The thought was unbearable. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No, I can't. I didn't mean to erase them. I want to go back." But when she looked up, Avani was gone. Rolanda was alone in the unfamiliar bedroom, in an unfamiliar body with an unfamiliar life stretching out before her. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but a lifetime of suppressing emotions kicked in. Rolanda took a deep breath, then another. She had to think logically. First things first, she needed to get to that brunch. Moving to the closet, she found it filled with clothes that both delighted and terrified her. Part of her reveled in the silks and satins, the delicate fabrics she'd always admired from afar. But another part felt like an imposter, playing dress-up in someone else's life. She settled on a pale blue blouse and white linen pants, an outfit that felt both comfortable and appropriate for a family brunch. As she dressed, Rolanda couldn't help but marvel at the changes to her body. Every movement felt different, from the sway of her hips to the brush of her hair against her shoulders. Makeup was another challenge. Rolanda found herself staring at an array of products on the vanity, overwhelmed by the choices. She settled for a light application of mascara and lip gloss, not wanting to risk looking ridiculous. As she prepared to leave, Rolanda caught sight of herself in the mirror once more. The woman staring back at her was beautiful, everything she'd ever dreamed of being. So why did she feel so conflicted? The drive to the restaurant was a blur. Muscle memory took over, guiding her through unfamiliar streets. Rolanda tried to focus on the task at hand, pushing aside the tumult of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She arrived at an upscale bistro, the kind of place Roland would have felt out of place in. Taking a deep breath, Rolanda stepped inside, scanning the room for familiar faces. "Rolanda! Over here, darling!" An elegantly dressed older woman waved from a corner table. Beside her sat a distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair. Rolanda's parents, or at least this version of Rolanda's parents. As she approached the table, Rolanda's mother stood, enveloping her in a warm embrace. "There's our girl. We were starting to worry." The hug felt foreign and familiar all at once. Rolanda breathed in the scent of her mother's perfume, a fragrance that triggered memories she hadn't known she possessed. "Sorry I'm late," she murmured, pulling away. I overslept." Her father chuckled, rising to kiss her cheek. "Some things never change, do they? You've always been a night owl." Rolanda managed a weak smile as she took her seat. A waiter appeared almost immediately, filling her water glass and handing her a menu. She stared at the unfamiliar dishes, mind reeling. "So, honey," her mother began, "have you given any more thought to that job offer? The publishing house is eager for your decision." "Job offer? Publishing house?" Rolanda blinked, searching her newfound memories for context. I'm still considering it," she said cautiously. "It's a big decision." Her father nodded approvingly. "That's my girl. Always careful and deliberate. But don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around every day." As the conversation continued, Rolanda found herself relaxing slightly. It was surreal, discussing a life she'd never lived, but somehow she had the knowledge to participate. She learned that in this reality, she was a successful freelance writer, considering a position as an acquisitions editor at a prestigious publishing house. But even as she engaged in the familiar banter with her parents, a part of Rolanda's mind was in turmoil. This life, as glamorous and successful as it seemed, felt hollow without her children. The thought of Emma and Liam, their faces already growing hazy in her memory, sent a stab of pain through her heart. As they finished their meal, Rolanda's mother reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Are you all right, dear? You seem distracted." Rolanda forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just thinking about the job offer, that's all." Her father chimed in. "Well, don't stress too much. Whatever you decide, we're proud of you. You've come so far, especially after, well, you know." A memory surfaced. Pain, confusion, family arguments. In this reality, Rolanda had transitioned in her early 20s, facing resistance and eventually acceptance from her parents. The recollection felt both foreign and intensely personal. After saying goodbye to her parents, Rolanda found herself wandering the city streets, mind whirling. This was everything she'd ever wanted: the right body, a successful career, accepting parents. So why did she feel so empty? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the sidewalk, Rolanda found herself in a small park. It was different from the one where she'd met Avani, but similar enough to trigger the memory of that fateful encounter. "Avani?" she called out, ignoring the strange looks from passers-by. "Avani, please, I need to talk to you." For a long moment, nothing happened. Rolanda was about to give up when a familiar voice spoke from behind her. "You called?" Rolanda whirled around to find Avani seated on a nearby bench, still resplendent in her emerald coat. The dream fulfiller's expression was neutral, giving nothing away. "I can't do this," Rolanda blurted out, sinking onto the bench beside Avani. "I thought I wanted this, but I can't live without my children. Please, you have to change me back." Avani's golden eyes seemed to peer into Rolanda's very soul. "Are you certain? This is the life you've always dreamed of, the body you've always wanted. Are you willing to give that up?" Rolanda hesitated. The thought of returning to Roland's body, to the depression and disconnection she'd felt, was terrifying. But my children are more important than my own happiness. I see that now. Please, Avani, I need to go back. A sad smile played at the corners of Avani's lips. "Oh, Rolanda, if only it were that simple. You've lived this life now, experienced this reality. You can't simply erase it and go back to who you were." Panic clawed at Rolanda's throat. "What are you saying? That I'm stuck like this? That I can never see my children again?" Avani shook her head. "Not exactly, but the path forward isn't as straightforward as you might hope. You've opened a door that can't be easily closed." "I don't understand," Rolanda said, frustration evident in her voice. "You changed me once. Why can't you just change me back?" "Because magic, like life, isn't about easy fixes," Avani explained patiently. "It's about growth, about facing the consequences of our choices. You wanted to be a woman, Rolanda, and now you are. But that doesn't erase the person you were before." Rolanda's mind raced, trying to grasp the implications of Avani's words. "So, what? I'm stuck between two realities?" Avani's smile was enigmatic. "In a manner of speaking. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? How will you reconcile the person you were with the person you've become?" Before Rolanda could respond, the world around her began to blur. Colors swirled together. Sounds became muffled. She reached out for Avani, but her hand passed through empty air. "The choice is yours, Rolanda!" Avani's voice echoed, growing fainter. "But remember, every choice has consequences. Choose wisely." With a gasp, Rolanda sat up. She was back in Roland's dingy apartment, rain still pattering against the window. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. But when she looked down at her hands, they were smaller, more delicate. Her hair fell past her shoulders, and the clothes she wore hung loosely on her new frame. Stumbling to the bathroom, Rolanda stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The face looking back at her was a blend of Roland and the Rolanda she'd been in the other reality. Feminine features softened the angles of Roland's face, creating a unique androgynous appearance. As she stood there, grappling with her new reality, memories from both lives swirled in her mind. She remembered Roland's pain and disconnection, but also the joy of holding his children. She recalled Rolanda's confidence and success, the feeling of finally being comfortable in her own skin. The shrill ring of a phone cut through her thoughts. With trembling hands, Rolanda picked up Roland's cell phone from the cluttered coffee table. "Hello?" she answered, her voice a mix of Roland's deeper tones and Rolanda's higher pitch. "Roland?" It was Catherine, confusion evident in her voice. "Is that you? You sound different." Rolanda closed her eyes, steadying herself. "Catherine, something's happened. I need to see you and the kids. Can you come over?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Roland, what's going on? Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," Rolanda admitted. "Please, I need to see you all. It's important." After a moment of hesitation, Catherine agreed. Rolanda ended the call and sank onto the worn couch, head in her hands. How could she possibly explain this? Would her children even recognize her? As she waited for Catherine and the kids to arrive, Rolanda's mind raced with possibilities. Could she find a way to balance both aspects of herself, to be true to her identity while still being a parent to her children? The sound of a key in the lock startled her from her thoughts. Rolanda stood, heart pounding, as the door opened. Catherine entered first, concern etched on her face. Behind her came Emma and Liam, their eyes widening as they took in Rolanda's changed appearance. "Roland?" Catherine gasped, shock evident in her voice. What happened to you?" Rolanda took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. "It's a long story," she began, "and I'm not sure you'll believe me, but I need you to listen, all of you." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.